Hey everyone, I'm Stephanie. I'm a book-loving, notebook-hoarding reader and writer on a mission to change lives one book and one notebook at a time. And this is the Get Literate podcast. On this podcast, we explore the power of leading literate lives. We talk all things books and reading, notebooks and writing, and everything in between to make our lives better. And no matter what better means to you, the pages inside books and notebooks can help us get there. So, each week, we'll mix together books, notebooks, mindful practices, and creativity to cultivate a life we love. Now, grab a notebook and your TBR list, and let's get literate. Hey everyone, Stephanie here, welcoming you back to the Get Literate podcast. You know, when I first started this podcast, I created a podcast bucket list. It was a list of the people, the topics, and the things that I wanted to have on and do and be and accomplish on the podcast. It's my way of making sure that I fill my own life with reading and writing that I love in order to share it with all of you. Well, today I get to cross off one of those bucket list items, and I couldn't be more excited for the interview that I'm bringing to you today. I want this podcast to be about all things reading and writing. You know, I love books and notebooks and fill my days with reading and writing and learning and all sorts of things in between. But I also want it to be a place where we can talk to authors. We can talk about authors. We can talk with makers and writers and all sorts of things. So today I'm talking to one of my favorite middle grade authors. You know, I love children's literature. I read like it's my job because it is as a children's literature professor. And today I got to talk to Anne Braden. You guys, Anne Braden. Anne Braden was on my podcast bucket list because all three of her books have personally touched my heart in so many ways. And I see firsthand how they touch readers' hearts, both adult and middle grade readers as well. So today we are going to talk all things middle grade. You're going to learn about Anne's very unexpected backstory, at least for me. We're going to talk a little bit about each of her three books and the very unique theme that each one of them embodies. And then we're going to talk a little bit about how her books are not just books. They're movements. They really are movements, and I think that's why they are so powerful for me. Of course, you'll learn how to get in touch with her and find all her books, and even learn about a really exciting summer writing retreat that she's offering in Vermont this summer that I am crossing my fingers that I get to go to. So you are definitely in for a treat today with today's interview. So without further ado, here's my conversation with Anne Braden. Anne Braden, welcome, welcome, welcome to the Get Literate podcast. I'm so excited to talk books with you today.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here.
So when I think of middle grade books, I think of you. I think of Anne Braden. You are the first author that comes to my mind because your three books are my three favorites.
Oh
right?
my goodness.
They really are. We've got The Benefits of Being an Octopus, Flight of the Puffin, and Opinions and Opossums. And I love how you talk about them as the power of strength, the power of connection, and the power of a question. There really is just this powerful driving theme that kind of comes up in all of them. But before we go there, before we talk all the wonderful things about your books, I would love for you to give us the backstory. What is your journey of, becoming this loved middle grade author today?
Well, okay. Let me start by saying that for the first 30 years of my life, one of the things I was pretty certain about was that writing was something I could not do.
Oh.
And it was like, I didn't have like a long list of things I couldn't do, but that was like near the top. And part of it was just like when I was growing up, I just sort of assumed that the people around me were better than me. It was like just part of how I interacted with the world. And so I'd see them raising their hands. I think, well, their thoughts are important. My thoughts aren't important. And if you don't think your thoughts are important, you're not going to write them down.
Right.
So,
Right.
so that's sort of like, that's the first big chunk of my journey was not writing. I didn't like my grandmother. I remember she tried to get me to keep some journal when we went on a trip to Pennsylvania together. And I didn't even want to do that. It's like, I was just like, can it be in bullets? Like, so I had like a list, a list, but like, I just had so little telling me that writing was something that would be a good direction to go in. And when I majored in Russian studies in college for not very many good reasons. But it's helped with like really understanding dictatorships, which is like, I think those themes have certainly gone into my books. But but afterwards I decided I wanted to be a teacher, and that I was trying to figure out, I was good at math, but I really thought I'd be kind of bored as a math teacher. And I liked science, but I thought I'd be overwhelmed by the labs and the like physicalness of it. And so I decided I had hated his social studies in class in school, but I started reading history after graduating college, and I was like, oh my gosh, I love this. And in retrospect, I was discovering the stories of people in it, which was definitely not how it had been taught to me. So I became a social studies teacher. Like English teacher was never even remotely on the table.
Wow. That's fascinating to me.
Every other subject was higher in
right. Right.
So I became a social studies teacher, and I really love doing that. And I really love, like, it was middle school, and like, just, I feel like helping kids wake up to the world and wake up to the things they can do about it. Like that was sort of how I approached social studies. And then my first child was born, and I stayed home from the classroom, and he would not sleep unless I was holding him. And I was stuck on the couch for like, and this was like before smartphones. So I was like totally bored. Like I was just like, oh my gosh, my brain is atrophying. And so I was reading a bunch, but even then I was sort of like, I need more than this, and one of the books I picked up was Louise Erdrich's I've been saying it wrong for so many years that I can't like actually Erdrich's The Blue Jay Dance. And I was like, well, she has a baby in it. I have a baby. Cool. I'll read this. And there's just one line in that book where she talks about going through the woods with her baby to her writing studio. And I was just like, oh, it's so lovely to be a writer. But then I immediately thought, well, writing is something I know I can't do. But I was still stuck on the couch for like 3 hours. And so at some point I was like, if I was going to write something, what would I write? And it's not like I had a whole story idea, but it was like, oh, maybe it could be this kind of setting. And then the next day I was like, oh, it could be this kind of character. And then it was just like, you do that for like one detail at a time. And after 2 months, you have a story emerging, whether you like it or not. And so I convinced my husband that I should get this little netbook computer, and I had baby in one arm, netbook computer in the other, and started typing one-handed, which was like, just shows exactly how boring. Right. But I thankfully had read Anne Lamott's Bird by Bird by that point, which said basically, if your first draft is really, really good, you're doing it right. And I was like, well, I'm doing this so right then. And so I kept going, and I eventually got to the end of this story, and I thought, oh my gosh, those people, I made that up. Like the things they did, I made that up. And it was such a feeling of power, even though I had basically not left the couch, and like the situation of my life had basically not changed. I had changed. And so it was this moment of just recognizing that I could create a story, little detail at a time, and how incredible it felt to. And so, so that was when I Googled, how long does it take to get published? Google told me 7 years. And I was like, oh, geez, that's a really long time. But I think I have time before, like if I have a second child, before they go to kindergarten, I was like, I've got 7 years. So I'm just going to go for it. And I just to fast forward, it took 7 years, like to the month. So wow. I'm completely average and mediocre in terms of time to publication. Wow. So I wrote, and like figured out stuff about the publishing industry, figured out that what I'd written was not at all publishable in any, hint of anything. And so I wrote another one, and, I just sort of got closer and closer. I wrote 5 completely different stories. But one of the other things that was happening over that time is that I started, so Sandy Hook, the school shooting in Newtown, Connecticut, happened in 2012. I was on I think I had finished writing my 3rd manuscript at that point. I still had no, progress in the publishing journey, but it shook me in such a deep way because my parents at the time, or my mom and stepfather, lived in Newtown, and I couldn't turn away. And so I started trying to find something to do in Vermont, where I live, because it's a really polarizing topic here, and we basically had no gun laws in our state. And so I was just like, gosh, like I've just got to do something. And so I ended up, like, oh my gosh, one little step at a time, I ended up at the front of this whole statewide movement to push for common ground gun laws. And it was like, I was a shy kid who did not, I mean, it was just like, I would never have chosen to do that, but it's just sort of, I said yes to small things and they built into each other. And I was like the only one willing to say yes at a few times. And so I ended up as the president of this new organization. And it was like, I started getting bullied all the time. And it was like incessant. And it was from people, it was in person, but it was also online from people all over the country. And the main message was, you have no right to be saying what you think. And I realized that, like, I was not going to let the bullies control my classroom when I was a teacher. And I was just so pissed that they thought they could control the entire conversation about a topic that was so important. And so I don't know how long I would have stayed with it otherwise, but I was not going to let the bullies win. Like, it was like, it's like, no, you can't. And so, like, I found out that I was way stronger than I ever had known, and that I could say what I thought. It was okay if not everyone agreed with me. Like, I could do hard things and come through the other side. Yeah. And so then my stories really started sort of going up a notch, because, like, I was willing to put things on the page that I had not been willing to put things on, like, put down before. And so the first 2 were still rejected, but it was a whole shift in my writing. And I was also writing, for the characters more, like when The Benefits of Being an Octopus, when I finished writing that, I didn't think it was going to sell. Like, everything else had been rejected, and this one was like a much harder to sell story. But I was like, but Zoe, her story deserves to be told. Like, she is a hero who needs to see herself on the page. And so, like, it might have been my own power at the beginning that started my writing process, but then it was like the power of the characters. So, and that has sort of pushed me forward from there.
Wow. I had no idea about that, most of that, actually. And the fact that one of my most adored middle grade authors for a very long time did not think that writing was even remotely a possibility until she found herself on the couch with that new baby. That really does just blow my mind. And
well, it's one of those things where if you anyone can write. If I can write, like, an example, just do whatever you want for 7 years and you'll be able to do it.
That's right. That's right. Well, and that's the other striking piece too, because you have 3 published books, at least at the moment, but you've written more, right? You had books that came before that arrived here. And as you were explaining the situation with finding your voice and not letting the bullies win, I could totally see, oh, that's why that part's in The Benefits of Being an Octopus. Oh, that's why that part's in Flight of the Puffin. Like, I loved how all 3 of your books just kind of came full circle in that moment. That was
yeah, thank you. It's one of those things where often you don't actually really recognize it in the moment. And, like, The Benefits of Being an Octopus, I was actually stuck midway through the book because I was like, I don't know what happens next. And I was talking to a dear friend, and she's like, doesn't it relate to guns? I was like, no, I'm not writing a book about guns. Like, no, like, that's a different part of my life. And she's like, I think that's where the story is trying to go. And so I had to get out of its way.
Yeah. And let's go there. Let's go to Benefits of Being an Octopus, because if I was, tortured and had to pick my favorite at this point, I've got to say that Zoe is good. Zoe has my heart. The Benefits of Octopus has my heart. And it's the one book where if someone asked me for a middle grade book, no matter who they are or where they live or what kinds of things they like, that one always comes to mind because someone will find themselves somewhere in that
Mhm.
book because there's just so much. And I mean, I love the book so much. I was joking with you that I took the octopus pledge at the NCTE conference right in the hallway. Chris McGee, so excited to get my octopus sticker.
Yes, I remember that. It was a wonderful moment.
It was. So I would love for you to start there. Can you give just a quick little synopsis of the benefits of being an octopus for readers who might not have read it yet?
Yeah, so it's about 12-year-old Zoe, she's a seventh grader, and when she gets home from school, she's got a lot to juggle because it's on her to take care of her three younger siblings. They're 4, 3, and 6 months old because her mom works at the local pizza restaurant then. And so she feels like they're in a pretty good spot right now because they finally have a nice place to live because her mom's boyfriend has this nice, neat trailer. So she feels like she just has to not screw that up. But her mom's boyfriend likes to keep the trailer really neat. And so she's trying to keep these three little kids from making a mess. And her mom's boyfriend's dad basically lives in the recliner in the middle of the living area, and he has quite a temper. So she's trying to keep these kids neat and quiet. So it's a lot. And so by the time she gets on the bus the next morning, she has not had time to think about school. She's not had time to do her homework. And it doesn't help that she kind of smells because the washing machine is broken and her mom doesn't have a car to get to the laundromat. So her clothes haven't been cleaned that often. And there's kids that judge her and bully her every day because of it.
Mhm.
And so when she gets to school, she wants to be as invisible as possible. So she loves the octopus because they have all the 8 arms to juggle all the extra things, but
Yes.
also they have incredible camouflage abilities. But there's this one teacher who sees her despite her trying to be invisible and is like, you know what? You remind me of who I was when I was your age. What I needed was learn how to get other people to take me seriously. And so I'm pulling you out of homework club and I'm putting you in the debate club because you need to learn how to speak up. So the book is about Zoe sort of recognizing the inner strength she has inside of herself and finding the courage to say the hard things she needs to say.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, you must have done this 1 or 2 times because what a perfect synopsis of the book. What struck me when I read The Benefits of Being Octopus, it spoke to my middle or my inner child, right? Because that's what middle grade literature does for
Oh,
me. It
yeah.
kind of speaks back to my 10, 11, 12-year-old heart. But what The Benefits of Being an Octopus really did for me was grab my heart as a parent. And
Mm.
that's why I really think that all of us, no matter what age we are, there is a place in our reading life for middle grade literature. And there was this one part that had me in tears, and I remember thinking, this is like the best parenting lesson that I could have ever learned. It was when Zoe was secretly listening to a fairly heated conversation between mom and the boyfriend, and she was kind of hiding in a place where she shouldn't. And if I remember correctly, it was over, something stupid. It was yogurt. It was, what was purchased at the supermarket. And the boyfriend wasn't happy and mom was trying to explain herself and the boyfriend wasn't exactly being very kind or being very nice about it. And Zoe was waiting. Zoe was like, okay, mom, what's mom going to say? Mom's going to give it to him. Mom's going to say something. And the boyfriend, made some not so nice comments to her. And instead of fighting back, instead of having her voice, the mom very quietly agreed with him and said, I know. And I bawled my eyes out because it was one of those parenting lessons that you realize parenting, those lessons are caught and not taught. And it's how
Yes.
moms and dads act and adults act. And it just struck me from such a visceral parenting perspective
Mhm.
that I think all of your books do actually for me, because we could go there. We can go there with Flight of the Puffin and certainly Opinions of Possums too. Um, how, I guess I'm going to go out of order with I thought I was going to ask you, but how do you do that? How do you have these powerful books that can speak to kids, right? But they can speak to parents. They can speak to such a wide audience and have all of these gems in there. Do you go into it, knowing, or is this just the process of, all those hours on the couch of thinking where stories go?
I I think part of it is just how parent child aside, like we are all human. It's all like coming down to this human core. And like power affects us the same way, and peer pressure affects us not quite the same way, but there's similar dynamics, you know. And I just feel like part of it is just sort of how does anyone respond to this as a human? And I remember like Zoe's life was not the life I had growing up. Like it was, there was her emotional life was the same as mine, but like there was a lot of more extra obstacles that she has that I didn't have to deal with. And part of my process for going into it was just like, okay, these are her obstacles. I know that this is very common for like many of the families in my own town right now. And so it's just like, how does any human respond to these things? Like, how does any human try to get through? How do, like, it's one of those things where it's just like, it comes down to just sort of the core of everything. I think that that's kind of what I try to stay very close to as I write. I just want it to be as honest as possible. Like definitely for the benefits of being an octopus, that was the question I was asking in my whole process. And I think I've kept that up. Flight of the Puffin was a little trickier too. Like it was more about like, there's a little bit more plotting involved. So like the plot sort of had to take a little bit more of a, like a driver's seat in some cases, but like I feel like, yeah, just like being like, okay, this is what feels real to me. And starting there.
Yeah. And that, yes, from as a reader point of view, yes, yes, and yes, that is exactly what you do. Like you just can't help but just be in it because it is real, because it is not perfect lives of perfect characters, and they're real things that are happening that kids are dealing with in the world right now. All different in the books, but definitely something that I think we can all relate to, and that sometimes adults might still need to learn.
Yeah. It's funny thinking about the realness. My mom, a few years, I stopped giving my mom manuscripts to read at some point because she actually told me, like, I think you should stop writing fiction. Like, I just think it's not a good fit. Like you should, I don't know. She thought I don't know exactly what she said, something about nonfiction or I don't know what, but maybe not writing. I blocked the whole thing out.
Good.
but so it had been a while since she'd read anything of mine, and I gave her an arc of Opinions in of The Benefits of Being an Octopus. It was first going to come out, and she wrote me back after she finished it. She's like, I told you that you should write what was real.
Oh.
So we both claimed victory.
That's the best. What a good, oh, I love the comeback. Oh, you're right. You've got a beautiful fiction stories, but with a lot of realness in it. So let's move on to Flight of the Puffin then.
Yeah.
You mentioned, I got lots of parenting lessons out of this one too, but tell us about this book.
So it's funny because one of the main thing that sort of the book grew out of was this local love brigade that I ended up starting in this sort of how I sort of start organizations like instead of like making dinners. but after the 2016 election, there was so much hate out there, and I was feeling really powerless, and I really hate that feeling of being angry and powerless. Like I just want it to get off me. And so I was desperate to try to figure out, what can I do? What's one thing I can do? And so I kept talking to people and asking them like what they thought, and I had enough conversations that at some point I found out someone's like, what about like postcards? And later that day, I heard that the Islamic Society of Vermont had gotten hate mail. And the person telling me was like, what can we do? And I was like, what if we send them postcards covered in hearts? If a stranger can send them hate mail, a stranger can send them love mail. And so they ended up getting 500 postcards covered in hearts. And like, there's this video of the imam holding up this stack of postcards. And he's like, if the person who wrote that original message knew that this was going to be the response, I don't think they would have sent it. And so it sort of sparked this whole like, oh my gosh, the the ways that we can actually impact the lives of strangers.
Mhm.
It was huge. And so the group started growing astronomically to different states. And like I had like a Facebook group and a Google spreadsheet, which is how I organize everything. And and it was one of those things where usually you just sort of send the love out and you feel calmer and just better. And you have no idea if it's going to affect someone, but it's going out there.
Yeah.
But sometimes you hear back from people. And there was this one time there had been a video that a teenage girl had posted. She lived in Los Angeles, and when her dad was driving her to school, he was stopped and taken by immigration authorities. And so we sent her her whole family love postcards via her high school. And a few months later, I got this random Facebook message, and it was from the principal of the school. And he's like, it's a really big deal to go to college where we are. And so the kids who have pledged to go to college, we take them on this massive field trip to a different part of the country. And we're coming to the Northeast, and can we come to your little town in Vermont and make love postcards with you? And I was just like, oh my gosh, yes. And so a few months later, like all these kids like piled out of vans, and we like sat and wrote these encouraging messages together, and they wrote amazingly encouraging messages. It was just, they're like, you've got this. And then afterwards, as people were getting back into the van, this girl came up to me and she's like, that was my uncle who was taken by immigration. And I'm so worried that he's not going to be free in time to see me graduate from high school. And we both hugged and we cried. And I thought, like, what are the odds that the two of us would be connected right now? Like two people, like strangers in completely different lives, completely different parts of the country. And yet here we are. And when I look back, like that's the moment when Flight of the Puffin was born. Like that idea that we are connected to everyone else, whether we see it or not, like whether we know it or not. And there was such a narrative of like division between people at the time. And I was just like, what about the narrative of connection? Like I'm going to write my narrative. And so like I'd been doing so many school visits all over the country for the benefits of being an octopus. And I know that like, yes, there's things that are different on the surface, but as soon as you start talking to people, like there's just so much that connects us. And so it really grew out of that sort of awe of the connection that exists. And so it's about 4 kids that live in different parts of the country and who all feel kind of alone, and how they're connected despite not recognizing that at all at the beginning.
Yep. I remember after reading that, I just kept thinking about, I need to go make a fistful of paper love bombs.
Yeah.
Start sharing them widely because it was such a beautiful concept.
It feels so good to make one and send it. It's like,
yeah,
it's a really therapeutic act
for
yourself.
Like, I'm glad you keep, randomly starting these organizations.
Because I have to stop now though. No, at least that one, I didn't turn it into like a 501c3 or anything.
Right. You didn't.
This is a Google spreadsheet only. I'm not in charge.
Oh, I love it. Well, see, now I'm curious to know about, is there an organization around opinions in a pasta?
No, that was just my own personal one.
That was your own. Okay.
I just went deep for that one.
Yeah. So for opinions in a possum, oh my goodness, Gracie and Agnes, they had my heart. And I wanted to read the review that I put online for it to kind of give readers a sense of the book, but also how it really just impacted me. And then you can run with it. Okay, so what I said, this is a delightful yet serious glimpse into the world of Agnes, a middle grade child grappling with how the world works around her. Living with her single mother, she's been conditioned to follow the rules and stay quiet in hopes of reaching for a better life. Say the right things, wear the right things, think the right things, including how to think about God. But interactions with her 70-year-old anthropologist neighbor has set her mind on fire. Why are things the way they are? Why do we believe certain things over others? Why does it matter who told our stories and how they were captured? These questions send Agnes on a journey of self-discovery so powerful that she cannot help bring her best friend and her mother along for the ride too. Oh, I just love this book. And this is like,
Yeah, I know.
oh, and I loved it, and again, I know I'm an adult reader reading it, and I know it speaks to middle grade readers, but my goodness, as an adult, these are all things that, especially as we grow, it's like, why am I doing this? Why am I saying
Yeah,
that? Why do I have to believe that? And to
yeah,
have it come from, those lessons come from the unlikely pairing of the young child and the 70-year-old neighbor. I just loved it. So I'll let you finally speak. You go ahead and tell us more.
I don't know. You can just keep going. I think one of the things that really was a spark for this. So my daughter, when I started writing it, was 6. And I had actually the younger sister of Agnes's best friend, Mo, Sadie, she's like 7. And my daughter actually helped me write some of her lines. Like, she's very much this huge, confident, elementary school kid that's like, I can do whatever I want and dance however I want. And
I love it.
like, and my daughter, I mean, she wasn't super confident out in public when she was really young, but like, she was so her full self, just in many different situations. And I was so conscious that, like, I know that I had completely lost, like, even just the difference between my yearbook picture in 6th grade and my yearbook picture in 7th grade is like, I mean, and it's such a uniform transition for so many girls. Like, what happens to us between the ages of like 6 and 12? And so, like, that was a question that was really sort of poking at me a lot. And I think part of it, like for Flight of the Puffin, I wanted to sort of look at gender boxes and how they affect boys. And I'll like, in particular, is sort of where I began, because I feel like the range of emotions that the limited range of emotions they're given access to by role models and, society is, very hampering. But I feel like with girls, like a society, like media is a lot better at being like, girl power and strong, now.
Yeah.
And so I'm just like, is it still, why is it like the fact that, I have to edit out "I'm sorry" from emails and edit out exclamation points from, I mean, I usually am a very excited person, but like, to feel like you might think that I'm angry if I if I end this sentence with a period, like so many of these things that are still in the water. And I was trying to sort of suss out, what is it and why and where did it come from? And I feel like that's the only way to be able to move past it, is sort of recognize the water we're swimming in.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of like thinking about all those invisible, because we're so used to it, we're so conditioned to it, that you don't see it unless you're like have all these extra like glasses on, special like x-ray vision or whatever.
Yeah.
And so that was really where it began. And it's so much of it is my own personal, like I loved the church that I grew up in. Like, I loved my ministers, these 2 amazing men, and one of them but the younger one led the youth group, and I was part of the youth group, and I loved it. And but then there came to this point when a new president of the youth group was elected, and he thought that everyone should have to sign a pledge saying that they believed in God. And I just wasn't sure I did. And part of it was that every time my dad had died when I was a baby. And so like the whole "Our Father who art in heaven," I always just got like too like caught up in the, like, is my father in heaven? Like, and like, it was so hard to feel like the God that I pictured, which is the God I always saw pictured, like this sort of kind of angry old man, that he would care about me. Like, I couldn't wrap my head around it. And so I didn't feel like I could sign something saying I definitely believe, like I wanted to, but I just wasn't there. And so I dropped out of the youth group. But to give him a lot of credit, my pastor talked to me afterwards, and he tried to convince me to push back on the rule. Because like, I don't think he felt like he could do it from an adult to kid,
Right.
but
Right.
like I could do it. And I was like, no, do not have the confidence to do that. Like, I'm sorry. And so then a few weeks later, he had appointed me as like the youth representative on the search committee for a new pastor. So I had this experience, like getting to read all of these applications. Also, most of the search committee was 70, 70 years old. And like, so we just like would read all these different applications, and all these different people's like talked about their personal view of God, and like how they defined faith. And like, it was the diversity. I was like, oh, I can find my way through this, like when there's all these options, you know. So I got there eventually, but if it had not been for my awesome pastor, I would not have gotten there. Like, I just would have sort of been like, okay, I can't do this. I don't know how to do this. And so sort of I really want to explore that, like the sort of lack of confidence that sort of is baked into us as, you know, girls in a lot of cases, and also the disconnect that I felt between that not very confident self and the image of God that I was presented. So I went into it being like, who knows? And it took me 4 years. I mean, there was so much rewrite. And actually, some of the themes of this were in one of the earlier manuscripts that I wrote and didn't quite get it to the right. But I kept coming back to it, and I was just like, I've got to figure this out. So.
Yeah. Gosh, I love how, like, I know, you know, writers write from what they know, but it seems like there is an awful big piece of your heart in every single one of these books.
Yeah, it's true. And it's, I think one of the things that, I feel like my biggest advice when people ask, like, what's your advice for being writers, like young writers? And it's just like, live fully. Like, you got to have a full experience to draw on. Don't major in writing. I mean, I major in writing, great, but like, I took 0 English classes. Actually, I took one required one that I did not do very well, which helps. I don't write very well. But turns out I don't write if I have no opinions about F. Scott Fitzgerald, and the entire class is about F. Scott Fitzgerald. I guess I did have opinions, but I was afraid to say them.
Yeah. But what a great thing for young kids to hear from you. You know, that you can be a writer without taking that traditional path. And then what a great thing for adults to hear too, that you can be a writer without writing your first, you know, sentence one-armed when you're an adult. I love it. That's my nugget today. Like, oh, there's still time. There's still time.
There's definitely still time. You have 7 more years to live. You've got it.
So another thing about your books, they seem to become experiences, right? They're books to be read, but they're also to be lived. I mentioned the Octopus Pledge. I know you had the Flight of the Puffin read aloud, the virtual opossum party, you know, like everybody's making love bombs to bring to everyone. Your books are movements, in my opinion. They really can cause movements, whether that's a large movement or just an individual movement within oneself, which I think is even more powerful sometimes. How does that feel, like, to see the result of your words, your books, your actions, your organizations, your everything?
I mean, I think it depends on the day. Some days it's like jaw dropping and I'm amazed, and other, like, part of it, I mean, all of this is like the community organizer part of my brain, you know, like superimposed on writer part. It's like, what? It's like, how can we make this, like, it's teacher part, like, it's all the 3 parts of me, all like, it's a wonderful Venn diagram. It's the smack middle part. But other parts of me are just like, they don't, like, it's just like, oh, it's probably like, I can discount it so easily on other days, you know, like, it just depends on, like, oh, they didn't, I don't know, like, it's so easy to, like, no matter how good something is, the voices in our head can always be like, not enough. Not enough. And so I'm working on that.
That's a lifelong thing, isn't that? I think a lot of women, especially, it's a lifelong thing. Well, now you have this on record, though. You could get a little Staples easy button that just have me telling you how much of an internal movement you've created and made with your books. And I
Well, I
know
might.
that that's a way.
Well, and it's funny because originally I do at the beginning of the process, I always have the right perspective because it's like with the benefits of being an octopus, my publisher had like basically gone belly up 6 months before the book came out. And I didn't think it was going to even get published. And it was just like this whole big dramatic thing. And I thought, well, maybe like 100 people will read it. And maybe if just one person's life is sort of affected by this, I will be happy.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's often how I go into each book.
Yeah.
At the beginning, I'm just like, I just want one person to be like impacted. And actually, I had a line about that at the end of the Opinions and Opossums that was edited out because of like shortening. But it was just about how like you say this thing that you don't think everyone else is going to understand if one person will.
Yes.
So that's some I have to like just internalize that and keep it there even after more. It's like once more than one person. I'm like, oh, I can't it be 10? Stay at the one. Stay at the one, Anne.
Stay at the one. Well, that's got to be why it works so well, because you really feel like when you're reading it, like it's for you. It's for you. And, hundred thousands of people might be thinking that same thing, but in the end, it is that one, right? That connection between you and the reader and the book, that just means everything to the reader and the author. But yeah, that's it.
It's such a powerful thing, especially as an introvert, to be like, here is my heart. Like, yes. It's the best way to get to know someone. It's like, yes. Read each other's books, or like read, have them read your book, and then you talk about, like, it's like, I don't know. I feel like it's the connection that I get to feel with my readers is so, so gratifying and so powerful. And that is really the biggest gift of all of this.
Yeah. Oh, well, I feel it as a reader for sure. But I can't end without asking you one question that I'm really dying to ask, because not too long ago, you put an Instagram post out there of you in a back stairwell, and it was covered with big sticky notes and small sticky notes and colorful sticky notes with a big old smile on your face about what you were working on. Did we get to have a sneak peek? Is there something in the works?
Yes, but it's one of those things where, like, I have, for one thing, it's like magic because I did not have the internet in that little stairwell. And I have drafted more and faster than I've ever drafted in my life.
Wow.
So that's exciting. The content, it also feels like there's no time to waste, because the content is about a secret society of teens that's working to fight book banning.
Please keep writing.
And I really want to draw on all the actual dark money network that's like,
wow,
definitely behind all of the current stuff going on, and my own experience trying to organize like community building when you feel like anytime anything is public, someone can show up and harass you until you have to like stop talking. Because that's like, I remember one time we had an organizational meeting at a library. We did not publicize it, but it happened to be on the library's website, and I showed up to find a whole room full of people so angry with me and who were just there to like take down every single word I uttered. And so like trying to find ways to organize around that it's like you just start to second guess everything you're doing. And so anyway, so turns out I have a lot to say. I have opinions.
Yes, you have opinions, and I'm so
Here's my little opinions. I have opinion sticker. I have questions. Yes, I have opinions.
Oh, that's it. That's it. We need that book. We for sure need that book. That's exciting.
I'm enjoying the process, and I now got through the first half, I think. So then all the sticky notes from the first half have come down, so I could have more space to plot the second half. Wow. So, and I got more colors of sticky notes because I was just like, this is an important business expense to have
yeah.
10 different layers of colors.
Yes, and I love that that's how you do it, because that's my walls are often covered with sticky notes, my notebooks, my computer screens, that's just how the brain works. So I love that.
Oh, yeah,
Oh, so
I have
excited.
only done it a little bit, and I'm now a full convert. Like,
Yeah,
I am all
yeah.
in now.
Oh, well, I will wait patiently for that next book.
Thank you. Hopefully it won't
So,
take 4 years like the last one did.
no, 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 don't make me wait that long. So before we wrap up, I would love to just for you to plug something that I know you're doing this summer so that listeners can find you and find more of your doing. I was so disappointed that I could not make this work last year. I am determined to get there this summer, but do you want to share what this amazing
Yeah.
opportunity for everybody?
Yeah. So it's so the Putney School is this wonderful artsy school in Vermont near where I live. And they offer teen programs all summer, but they have 1 week that's focused on adults. And it's this really cool thing where they feed you delicious food, and there's lots of different kinds of art studios happening. So there's like painting and like blacksmith and glass and weaving and jewelry making and creative writing. And so I lead the creative writing section. And last year, it was my first time doing it. And oh my gosh, it was so fun. Like there was so many people that it was honestly mostly teachers and librarians that came, which I was like, great, this is awesome. And some people had a lot of experience writing and were like, one of them was about to be published, and others were like really down that path, but others came and part of their intro was like, I don't think I'm really a writer. Well, let me tell you, by the end of that week, like the amount of incredible, powerful writing that came out of them. And we all read at the end, and like, not that anyone would have to, but like it was such a transformative experience for all of us. And it was one of those things where, as a teacher, my approach was always very constructivist, like, well, where is the student starting? And that's something you can really do when you have a small group of adults.
Yeah.
So it's a lot of like one-on-one work, but just also the dynamics of the group was fabulous. So it's there's a link to it in my like link tree. There's a link to register, and so like that's it. Like I think that's on Instagram and Twitter, and I don't know if I was able to do that on Facebook, but yeah, so it's on my website and as like a blog post, I think. But yeah, so the Putney School summer program, and yes, oh my God, it would be amazing if you could come. That would be so awesome.
I'm working on it. I definitely want to do that. I mean, technically, I think I'm close. Even if I couldn't, I don't know. I'm going to figure something out. I will figure it out, because, the dream of writing, I write books for teachers, right? So I write your mom's nonfiction.
Yeah, yeah, right.
But I still have these little, nuggets in the back of my head. And I thought, what better place than the beautiful setting, my goodness, my favorite author. And then you've got all this artsy, wonderful creativity.
The jazz center is there too. So there's all these jazz musicians like playing. Wow.
It's wonderful. It's wonderful.
And just the idea of like what a writing retreat does, like for me, it's just like the idea of like writing is so hard when your brain is full of a variety of distractions and different things you're trying to keep track of. And like when you go on a retreat like this, even just like after a day, it's like things settle and there is space. Like there is space in your brain. And so it's like, it feels amazing. It's like this detox of stuff.
Yes.
So,
oh, that sounds wonderful. It sounds wonderful. So tell listeners where they can find you. Your website is full of such wonderfulness, but your website, maybe your social channels, and they can come find for themselves.
Sure. So my website is annbradenbooks.com, and it has lots of free video resources for teachers and lots of stuff. And I'm on Twitter and Instagram at Ann Braden Books also. And then Facebook is Ann get.b.braden. And yeah, I mean, I'm technically on TikTok, but not really knowing what like if I made a video for something, I'm like, I will post it on TikTok. I can't even figure out like Instagram stories. So I figure.
Well, I am so grateful for you to spend this time with me. When I first started the podcast, I wanted a space where I could just nerd out on all things reading and writing that I love, books and reading and writing in notebooks, and just wanted a space to be able to put it out there. And I made a bucket list, like a wish list of what kind of episodes would you have? Who would you have on? And you were on my list, and I finally got brave enough to reach out and ask. So this is a really exciting day for me. I'm so excited.
Oh my goodness, I'm so honored. You have made my day.
Thank you, Anne. I truly appreciate it. I look forward to seeing you in the summer. We're just going to seal the deal.
Yes. Positive thinking.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for listening to today's episode of the Get Literate podcast. You'll find links to all the books, resources, and ideas mentioned in the show notes and at alitlife.com. And if you want more, you might like to join my Patreon community. There, you'll find additional inspiration for your reading and writing lives, like bonus podcast episodes, book calendars, monthly book clubs, notebooking challenges, live events, giveaways, and much more. It's only $5 a month, and you get instant access to all the previous content too. You can learn more at getliterate.co. But one more thing. If you love what you listened to today, please take a moment to rate and review the podcast, or take a screenshot of the episode and text it to a friend. This helps the podcast grow and builds our bookish and notebookish community too. Thanks so much for listening.